Welcome to Tales of Abundance. I'm Dr. John Oberg. Joining me, and as always, my co-host Randy Lorensen. Randy, good to see you.
Hi, John. Excited for this today.
Yeah, to be fun.
Yeah, we got Jim Lynch here, and we're going to talk about bonds. And I'm guessing a lot of our listeners are probably not that excited about that.
That's a sentence you don't hear very often. I'm excited to talk about bonds.
Well,
maybe Jim hears that occasionally.
Never.
Yeah. But I think it's part of the reason I'm excited about this, and I wanted to have Jim on, is I think this is a really important topic. And as listeners probably have figured out by now, I am deep into the economics and get really wonky and really deep with stuff. And I came to the conclusion long ago that when you talk, if you really want to understand how the economy works, how money works, the markets, even politics, you talk to bond traders, they understand it better than pretty much anybody else, and the debt and just the way the world works. And Jim has also been a resource in writing my book. There were a couple of times where I needed to play something out and I needed scenarios, and he gave me invaluable insight as to, as to where to go and how to think about things. So I think listeners are really in for a treat here and are going to get some real wisdom and things that they probably have never thought about. So welcome, Jim.
Well, thanks for having me on, guys. I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
Hey, we were talking before the show. You started trading bonds when?
1986.
So when he was 3 years old, people.
Yeah. So I started I'm going to be celebrating 39 years in the bond business. So there you go.
Okay, so you've forgotten more about bonds than I'll ever know, is what I heard.
Yeah, but bonds are basically a simple investment. However, one of the most misunderstood investments.
Yeah, we were talking about that before the show, right? Like,
yeah.
Nobody understands bonds.
Yeah.
But what are they?
Well, bonds come in different forms. You have treasury bonds, which was probably what most people have heard of. You have corporate bonds. You have municipal bonds. Like we're sitting here in Austin, Texas right now. Austin issues bonds for their schools, for the roads out there. You know, they don't have several $100 million sitting in the bank to fix all the potholes that you see driving around. So they issue debt. And they get things done. And like we have a lot of people that moved in here recently over the last several years. They'll issue debt to build a school, add on to a school, fix the hospitals. Anything that's a public interest is generally your municipal bonds. But they're all bonds. They all work the same way.
It's a loan, right? I mean, so as a school says, I'm going to issue a bond, what that really means, I'm going to borrow your money.
We're going to borrow money.
Yeah.
Yeah, like the city, the state, they don't have hundreds of millions of dollars in the bank to fix some of these issues. So you have to raise the debt. The same thing a corporation will do. You have corporations here in Austin. Mm-hmm. Apple is here. So is Facebook. They'll borrow money to build a building or whatever the case may be. They're probably bad examples. They have a lot of cash.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
You get the point. Companies do issue debt. To buy back stock, to pay out dividends, not really a great idea in my opinion, but look, they do it. Governments, our government, they issue debt to pay off all our other debt, and because we overspend. We'll get into this a little bit, but by and large, in its simplest terms, and there's bonds that go from 1 year, or actually I should say 3, 6, 9 months, and T-bills, they go from 1 year to 100 years. And what you're basically doing is loaning your money to a government, to a company, to a state. They give you a fixed maturity date. Let's say it's 10 years. So we'll say March 1 of 2035, and they give you a fixed rate. 95% of bonds are a fixed rate. You get that for the next 10 years, provided that the company is, or the city or the state still in business. There's no magic to it. Now, there are some esoteric things, but for the most part, that's how bonds work. Why is it so darn confusing? Okay. Treasury bonds are very simple, backed by the government. But there's treasury bonds. There's Ginnie Mae, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, Federal Home Loan Bank, and several others. Well, how do these work? They're bonds. They're backed by different resources. You have J.P. Morgan. It's a big bank. It's our largest bank. They have senior bonds, junior bonds, subordinated bonds, convertible bonds, preferred bonds, all with different ratings, different criteria. You have general obligation bonds in the case of Austin. You have water bonds, school bonds, hospital bonds. So this is where
it's like just different risk with different interest rates. And,
yes.
Okay.
And what really is the problem is the media. You'll listen to CNBC or Bloomberg or whatever else have you, and every day they report it a different way. The bond market's strong today. Well, what does that mean, the bond market's strong today? Well, what that means in my terms is prices are up, yields are down. Okay. The next day they're going to say, well, yields are higher today. Well, what does that mean? That means the bond market's weaker. They don't say it the same way every day, and every station's different. And it is very confusing because a lot of times I got to, put my cap on. What did he just say? So I always tell people, think of a seesaw. If you look at a seesaw, rates go up, the value of the bond goes lower. Rates go down, the value of the bond goes higher. Some of these just basic, concepts would make it a little easier if people could do it this way, but they don't. If you guys don't mind, I just would like to give a little disclaimer here, if you don't mind.
Please.
Yes.
Nothing I say today is going to be investment advice. Okay? If you guys all want, I'll give you some parameters how to invest your money. That's great. I have, as I said, I've worked 39 years in this industry. I've owned 2 investment firms in my lifetime. I've sold them both. I've worked for some of the big boys out there, RBC Wealth Management, UBS Financial Services. So I'm pretty well versed out there, but I am here today representing none of them. My current firm I sold 5 years ago. I basically only manage fixed income investments for them. I don't raise money for them. I don't advise anybody. If you guys ask me today to be your advisor, I'm not. I don't even have the licenses anymore. All I do is manage, I manage 2 portfolios from my former company. I manage a fixed muni portfolio and a taxable portfolio. If you want to call me or email me and ask me a question, great. All right. I also mine Bitcoin. I run my own node. That's fun. The bonds, I could do it in my sleep. I'm very good at it. I've been in the top quartile for decades. So look, feel free to ask questions. Feel free to, pin me down a little bit. But to me, bonds are simple. Keep it simple, stupid. You hear this all the time. Mm-hmm. I give you money for a specific period of time. I'm going to get that money back with interest. And, is that good, bad, or indifferent? Well, we'll get into it.
There's so many questions I want to get into. Let's start with some really simple ones. I've got young kids, in early 20s, and one's 14, and we talk about money.
Yeah.
If I wanted them to read a book or a paper on bonds, just to understand, here's what stocks mean, here's what bonds, do you have your favorite books on investing that you get people to read as hey, this is the starting place?
I'm walking down 2nd Street in downtown Austin a few years ago. I live right down there. And I'm walking down 2nd Street, and these 2 kids from UT stop me on the street. And they say, hey, can we ask you a question? Sure. Can we videotape you? Sure. Knock your brains out. What would you do? How would you advise us, 20-year-olds, moving forward in life? I said, okay. First of all, work for yourself. Don't work for anybody else. If that's one thing I learned in 67 years, be your own boss. I want you to tithe 10%, and I want you to save 10%. Start now. If you're working now, do it now. And, they thought it was cute. And I said, now I want to tell you what I would really do. And they looked at me. And
are you still recording at that point?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, good. All right.
I said to him, and they asked, can we still record? I said, sure. I said, this is what you should do. You're 20 years old. What I'm about to tell you right now, I believe you'll retire when you're 30. Not that you will, but you'll have the ability to. And he said, what's that? Just buy Bitcoin. Just buy Bitcoin. This is back in, 21, 22, what was it, 20,000 a share or whatever it was. I said, look, I have 3 grandkids. They're all Bitcoiners. You want me to tell you something different? You want me to tell you to go buy Apple or Microsoft? I'll tell you that. This is what I'm doing for my own grandkids. I don't think they're going to have to work much past 30. Will they? That's their decision. Let them enjoy life. But will they have to? And that's where you want to be. So, I don't like bonds. I think it's the worst investment in the world. I would not touch it with a 10-foot pole. Do you have to learn about it? Sure, I guess you have to, read a book. There's a lot of books out there. I've read all the books. You guys have mentioned a few of them on your podcast already. Is there a really great book off the top of my head on bonds? I can't think of one.
Yeah.
But anybody under 40, forget you even know bonds. It's a dead investment, at least for the foreseeable future. Now, I say that because from 1900 to 1980, we had a bond bear market. It was the worst time in the world to be in bonds. Just look at the track record. You pull up any chart, it'll look terrible. From 1980 to 2020, we had a bond bull market. It was the best investment in the world. And I did very, very well in this time. Things changed in 2020.
And to be clear, that's because interest rates kept dropping.
Yeah.
And the part that people don't understand about bonds, right, is when the interest rate drops, the value of the bonds that you own
bonds go up. Yeah.
Right? That's the thing that's counterintuitive, I think.
Yeah, that's what most people just think of the seesaw.
Right.
Rates lower, prices higher.
Right.
And, like 20 years ago, I started this, I got wind of this philosophy in bonds, and we had a field day on it. It was called Rolling Down the Yield Curve. I don't want to spend too much time on it because I'm not doing it today. But essentially, rolling down the yield curve is you buy a 10-year bond, hold it for 5 years, sell it, repeat the process. So you got a 10-year bond at 3%, let's say at par. You buy it. You hold it for 5 years. You sell it at a 2% yield. You'll sell it around 105. Take the 105 on $100,000. That's $105,000. Go back and buy the 3% bond in 10 years. This was like robbing a bank. This is like taking candy from a baby. When you're a bond manager, if you can outperform other managers by 25 basis points, that's 1/4%, you're a hero. You're like Derek Jeter of the Yankees. An equity guy who outperforms someone else by 1/4% gets fired. In the bond business, you did that? Wow. So it was very easy to make money for 40 years. And that brings me to another point. Nobody out there managing money has ever managed money with what we're going through right now. So all these charts and all these geniuses on TV, this is what's going to happen, that's going to just take a step back and realize none of us have ever done this before. Now, maybe Warren Buffett, but I think during the Great Depression, I think he was 16 or 17 years old. He wasn't managing money for anybody. So we are all newbies at this.
So for the uninitiated, which I would consider myself one of those in this conversation, did something happen in 2020 that changed all of it?
Actually, it was the spring of 2019.
Okay.
What happened in the spring of 19, the Treasury curve inverted. Now, what does that mean? That means short rates, your 2-year rate was higher than your 10-year rate. We call that an inverted yield curve. That's usually not a great sign. It's usually a sign of a recession or something like that. Well, the Treasury inverted in the spring of 19. And then something that's never happened before also inverted. Munis have never inverted before.
I didn't know that.
So tax-free bonds never inverted. They inverted over the summer. Whoa. Something's not right. There's a sign here that in September of 19, you probably have heard people say this, the repo market blew up. What's the repo market? That's where banks put money at the Fed and they get an overnight rate. And the rate went, I forgot what the rate was. Rates were very low at that time, 0.25%, 1%, whatever it was. It went to 10% overnight. Whoa. Overnight loans, 10% yield on U.S. government paper? Something's not right. What'd the Fed do? What they always do. They printed. And they fixed it. Now, look, none of us foresaw the pandemic of March of 20. All right, but that certainly poured gasoline on a fire that was brewing. And then you had the market blow up. And this is something I've never in my life saw. Yes, corporates will blow up, munis will, get hit, stocks will get hit, but the Treasury market got hit. You go back to March in 20, you couldn't sell your Treasury bonds. What? You can't sell your Treasury? This is the largest, most liquid market in the world. The bid-ask spread, which is like peanuts, it's like cents, spread out 2, 3, 4, 5 points. You couldn't sell them. Yes, you could.
Yeah.
But your 100,000 be worth 95,000 or 90, whatever it was worth. Unheard of in the U.S. Treasury market. Something was really bad. Anyway, we all know what they did. They printed. So that was the tea leaves part 2. You go to the third quarter of 22, and you had the issue with the UK. They were basically bankrupt. What happened? Debt. How'd they get out of it? They printed. You had the first quarter of 23 with the bank blow up, with these signature banks, Silicon Valley Bank. Was this a bank issue? No, wasn't a bank. Those banks were in great shape. What was the issue? They owned too many Treasury bonds. They went from 100 cents on the dollar to 70 cents on the dollar. You guys wanted your money. You go down to the bank, pull your money out. What do they got to do? They don't have the money in the bank, guys. They got to sell assets. Well, what's their biggest asset? Treasury bonds, the most liquid asset. They had a problem. What'd the Fed do? They created this, another acronym, the BTFB, whatever it was called, and they basically told banks, give us the bonds, we'll give you 100 cents on the dollar, and you can redeem your share, your depositors. What? And people with over 250,000 got bailed out? Why? These are all signs, and they're not good signs. And these, to me, are signs of a black swan. And that's why I say, for that period from 1980 to 2020, bond bull market, well, we're in a bear market now. You can see it in our inflation numbers. You can see it in almost, and really, can you believe the stats out there today? Someone was talking to me earlier today about inflation. Well, I think our GDP number came out today, or the PCE is coming out, and they're going to tell you it's 3% or lower, whatever the new number is. Walk across the street to any supermarket. Go in there and tell me your inflation's only 3%. Come on. We're not dead out here. I mean, we know it's higher than 3%.
So, I mean, conventional wisdom from let's call it the mid 90s until like the teens, the mid teens in the 2000s, it was kind of like you buy equities earlier in your retirement savings. Then as you get closer, you kind of have equities and bonds, and then you retire. And I'm going back, 30 years in my recollection here, but it's like you have bonds and you ladder the bonds, and you have income, and you maybe get an annuity, or like that was the way people thought about things, right?
Work great for 40 years.
Yeah. And so now it sounds like like it's not just the rules of the game have changed. It sounds like maybe the game has changed.
Game has changed. It's different. You know, everything, I love to say this, everything is great until it isn't. So if inflation by the government standards, and they're trying to get it back to what? They want 2%, right? It's at 3%. Maybe. If you look at M2, which is our money supply, or global M2, take either one. And I'm going to give roundabout numbers here. Since the GFC, the Great Financial Crisis, we've been expanding the money supply by about 8%. Give or take. Some people think it's higher.
That's per year.
That's per year. It's compounding annually at 8%. Now, if you add taxes in there and your cost, your fees, well, I mean, you're probably somewhere between 12 and 15%. Let's call it 10. All right, let's just say, let's be conservative and say 10%. Well, that's what you have to beat to make any money. What? Yeah, your investment's got to do better than 10. Well, what does that? Well, let's go to the racetrack. I haven't done this in decades, but let's go to the racetrack. And then I grew up in New Jersey, used to go to Monmouth Racetrack and the Meadowlands there. And my buddies and I, we would go in there and, you know, we didn't have much money. We had nickels and pennies and whatever, but you could buy a ticket for the races. You could win. Now, I think I have this right. You can place or you can show, or you could buy a combo ticket and you would have all three, right? So if your horse came in the top three, you got something. Well, we didn't really win too much money, but it was fun. It was a learning experience. But let's play this little game here. So the S&P 500 has 10 different sectors in them. All right, we're going to add 2. So we have 12 horses in the race. All right, our bogey is 10. Let me tell you what's coming in last. Long-term bonds. There's not a chance in the world you're getting 10% on your bond portfolio.
Right.
Okay, so we know that horse is losing. We're not betting on that. Now, I'll let you guys figure out the rest of them, okay? But I'm going to take the top 3. Okay, the S&P over decades has done about a 10% return. Okay, you know, maybe if you bought the S&P 500, you'll break even. I grew up in New Jersey. I'm not a Yankee fan, but I remember George Steinbrenner owning the Yankees. You don't play 500 baseball for the New York Yankees. If you did, you got fired. Just ask Billy Martin. He died, but he got fired 5 times. You're not playing 500 baseball for the Yankees. So the S&P 500 is not going to do it. Okay, well, what is going to do it? Well, you know, if you look at the last 15 years, probably a good barometer, the NASDAQ could be doing it, right? It's average 15% a year. And believe it or not, no one looks at this, but gold has outperformed the S&P for the last 15 years.
That's a pretty recent development too, though, because it was stagnant for a minute there.
Yeah, but on average, it's beating the S&P 500. Now, what horse is going to win? It might be a good idea to pick that horse. And I have it on my shirt. The fastest horse for the last 16 years has been Bitcoin. Now, it's average 50% a year, 50. You don't get 50% with no volatility. All right, it's down 20% in the last few weeks. Okay, you have to live with it. But you're not putting your food money, your healthcare money, your mortgage money in Bitcoin. All right? What percentage should you have? That's for you to decide. All right? So, but that's the fastest horse. Can I beat a 10% money printing? I think I can. I mean, I've been in Bitcoin for several years now. The only year I did not win with my percentage in Bitcoin, I think, was 23. I think the S&P and the NASDAQ both beat me that year. And at that time, I had 70% in bonds. Jim, you just said don't buy bonds. It's true. You don't buy long-term bonds. but I have T-bills and I have short-term munis, and that money comes due, and I can make decisions with that money. So I don't, I told you I manage 2 portfolios. My taxable portfolio is about a 2-year average maturity with a duration of 1.5 years. My muni portfolio is about a 1.5-year maturity with a duration of 1. So I'm on the short end, and clients call me, the people I manage money for, they'll ask me like, why so short? Or can I get any more yield out of my bonds? No. Well, other people can. Good. Go with them. How would I get more yield? You ever hear of equities? You ever hear of gold, Bitcoin, real estate, any of these things? Now, John, I believe you spent some time in California, if I'm right.
Yep.
Okay. Anyone else live in California? Okay. If you're a resident of California, you understand these 2 things really, really well. You either have water or you don't. There's no in between. It's not like you could take a 5-minute shower. No. You either can take a nice shower or you can't take a shower at all. You heard the old expression, if it's yellow, let it mellow. If it's brown, flush it down. Californians know this. That's the water issue there.
For those that haven't lived in California, why do some people not have water? I guess I don't understand this.
When they have a great year, what's a great year in California? They get a lot of snow. And that snow melts down and the water runs down, they have it. When they don't get a lot of snow or a lot of rain, the rainy season in California is in the fall. You go to San Francisco in the spring, you understand why it's the golden brown state. All those hills you see there are all golden brown, starving for water. And I don't want to get into the politics of things, but water tends to leak out of California into the ocean, and they don't use it. That's a story for another day. The state of California, same thing on their finances. They either have money or they don't. I think it's the 4th or 5th largest economy in the world. So what's with their finances? Well, it's home to Silicon Valley, all those tech companies. And these guys are making money. For the last 50 years, it's been a home run in Silicon Valley. My son-in-law works there. I mean, look, my kids my kids and grandkids all lived there at one point in time, close to 20 years. We had a home in Tahoe. I get it. So the thing with California is if the market's doing great, they have all these, they're going to reap in all these capital gains taxes. When the market's not doing so great, let's go back to 2022. Fed starts raising rates. The beginning of 22, California had a $75 billion surplus. Everybody wanted to spend the money. Governor Newsom, to his credit, would not. He saved it. Good thing, because by the end of 22, they had a $25 billion shortfall in just 7 months. $100 billion. Where'd it go? Well, that's your capital gains taxes. And the United States of America right now is very similar to California. We have $37 trillion in debt. If you look at where we get a lot of our tax revenue from, same place that California does. So let's go back to 22. In April of 23, government's collecting taxes. Very little taxes. Why? Markets were down 30-some-odd%. Bonds were down 10-15%. Everybody's taking losses out the kazoo. Very little tax to pay.
So jump in. So if I look at the income tax, I've never even thought about this, but if I look at the income tax collections for the Treasury, U.S. Treasury,
yeah,
how much of that is based on ordinary income versus capital gains? Is it really I never even thought about that pie.
Yeah, off the top of my head, I should have these numbers, but this is not what I do. Let's just take last year in 24. They took in almost $5 trillion.
And the total take.
Total take.
I think
receipts.
income tax was about half of that.
Yeah, I would say that would be my guess. Income tax will be about half that. Okay, so in 24, we took in almost $5 trillion. We still had a debt. We still spent $1.8 trillion more. Now, I like to point out to people, in 23, the market did really good. In 24, the market did really good. And yet, we still can't pay our bills. Probably not a good sign for me. I will say this. I honestly believe that the Fed, the Treasury, cannot let the market go down for any extended period of time. Could we get a correction in the stock market like everyone's calling for, 10, 20%? Sure. It can't stay down there long. The Treasury needs the money. They need the receipts. You get a 20% fall off in the S&P for 25, it's going to cost you that much more money. The Fed's done this calculation. They're not dumb people down there. All right. They know if you go back to 20, the Fed did something really crazy, really strange. Again, you got to read the tea leaves. They came out and printed all that money. They backed the bonds. They bought corporate bonds and high yield bonds on their balance sheet. What? It's taxpayer money. Well, why'd they buy high yield bonds of all things? Well, turns out there's 4 companies they had to back. I believe it was AT&T, Verizon, and off the top of my head, there was 2 others. Those companies were BBB- rated. If they would have got downgraded by charter, all your pension funds, all your mutual funds would have had to sell them, because by prospectus, they can't hold high yield debt in their portfolios. That would have created a catastrophe. You would have had a real problem with pensions, pension payouts. The Fed knows all this. They're learned men and women. They knew this. That's why they did it. Why would they back the stock market? Well, okay, if the stock market goes down by 40%, I have all these retirees that rely on that money. I either got to pay them, through some type of government payment, or I could just back the stock market and they'll take the money out of the market and I'm good. A few $1 trillion to them, I don't know what the numbers are, but a few $1 trillion, a lot better. If you go back to 20, they were bailing out pension accounts. This is unheard of. Why are they doing it? Because they can't have Larry Lunchbucket out there not being able to buy food and buy groceries and put gas in his car. Just not going to happen. They know that cost is a lot more than what it is to support the stock market or the bond markets. So I can go on and on about government debt. I think we're at a crisis level. Again, I could be wrong. Maybe I am wrong. Well, then S&P has had 2 phenomenal years in a row, up over 20% in 23, up over 20% in 24. Real estate doing pretty good. Bitcoin, the cryptocurrency, well, Bitcoin has been up a lot. I understand, gold has been up a lot. People are taking gains. And with all this, we're still 120% debt to GDP, still running a 7% debt, a negative 7% budget deficit, and our net international investment position right now is negative 80%. What is going on? The math is not working. I'm a simple guy. 1 + 1 is 2. That's why I'm a bond guy. I understand simple things. I'm not as good as Warren Buffett, like analyze spreadsheets on equities and PE ratios and all that. I don't really want to do that. Give me a bond. Let me know what's going on, and I'll run with it.
And is it like how you view this problem? You mentioned your grandkids and your kids, and for you, like, does everyone need to kind of look at this problem a little differently, or is it?
Oh, You know, history doesn't repeat itself, but often rhymes. Is that the phrase, if I got it right? Know your history. Go back and read about what happened in the Weimar Republic after World War I. Look at Argentina. Look at Venezuela. Look at some of the countries in Africa. Lebanon was the most recent. Look at England. England's basically bankrupt. They would have been bankrupt 3 years ago if the Fed didn't bail them out. Now, you're going to say, well, the Fed didn't give them any money. Nonsense. They opened up swap lines with them. That's QE, guys. You know, you can call a chicken for crying out loud. You know, when you take money out of our pockets and give it to somebody else, that's QE. All right. Now they got all kinds of acronyms that they'll use and that they'll, tell you. Okay, this isn't one of those, well, gee, why are they doing this questions? So in the old days, we used to have off-the-run treasuries. We used to print out computer sheets, and you could buy off-the-run treasuries. What's an off-the-run treasury? Well, as you know, the Treasury issues debt every week, every month, on a quarterly basis. They got trillions and trillions of debt that they got to roll over and pay. So those are new issues. Same thing. Austin comes out with a new issue. You can buy the new issue, or you can buy a secondary, an off-the-run Austin issue. Well, the Treasury has off-the-run treasuries. And in 23, the primary dealers, which I think there's 22 or 23 of them, a primary dealer like Goldman Sachs, companies like that, when the Treasury issues debt, if they can't sell the debt, well, guess what? You're a primary dealer. You're my new best friend. You get the bonds. Wonderful. That's what I want. Bonds on my inventory I can't sell. That's great. That's what I want. Inventory.
So those banks are essentially buying them.
They have to. There's no choice.
They're required to.
Yeah, let's say an issue comes out for $100 billion and they only sell $80 billion. Guess who gets the 20? The primary dealers. And they're starting to get a little full of these off-the-run treasuries. And that means they're not going to be buying the new issues, or they're starting to push back. What's the government do? Well, you know what we'll do? We will buy those off-the-run treasuries from you, but you have to buy the new issues that we put out. Wait a second. I have 3 grandkids. I think they can add 1 + 1 is 2. All right, that's basic math. You're going to buy my bonds at par, even though they're selling below par. You buy my bonds at par, and I get the money, and I can go out and buy the new issue treasuries. Yeah. Well, what do you call that? Oh, that's QE. That's quantitative easing. That's putting liquidity into the system. They call it by other different names. This to me is a red flag. When I see this,
so for the uninitiated, so what the government's done then is they've printed some money,
yep,
so that they can buy these secondary bonds,
yeah,
so that I think the FBI might call that money laundering in some cases.
Oh, that doesn't count. That only counts for you and I, John.
Got it.
You and I can't do that.
I was just being tongue in cheek, but I guess maybe I should be careful what we put out.
Yeah, that's true.
Editorial control for myself.
True, yeah.
Yikes. So when you say take money out of my pocket, you don't literally mean they're taking the money out of my pocket. What you mean is they're printing money, thereby devaluing the money in my pocket. And so it's actually it's hurting my buying power, right? So that, what I could buy for $1 last year now costs me $1.20 this year. That's inflation, right?
Isn't it robbing from you?
Yeah. I mean, the guys that write the rules on robbing say no, but
John, I walk by your house.
Oh, I'm there. I don't like inflation. I don't like the way it works.
Just so everybody understands this, I walk by your house.
Yeah.
John's got a pretty nice place here. You know what? I need something from this place, and I take 2% of it. You're probably not going to notice it,
right?
But after a while, you're going to say to the wife, like, "Honey,
half our grass is missing."
Yeah, what's going on? Oh, you know that guy Jim walking by the house every day? He needs it for his yard. Look, they're stealing. That's what we call that. We call that stealing, and they are robbing you. All right. You want another sign? Let's do one. So I already mentioned the third quarter of 22. The UK had this issue. The Treasury Move Index, which measures volatility, blew out. It's a real problem. This is something I watch on a regular basis. It's usually under 100. That's the index. This was around 130, 140. That means the Treasury market's blowing up. Look, the Fed has two mandates. Low unemployment, keep inflation lower. That's hogwash. They're there to make sure that Treasury works. That's their primary function. That Treasury blows up, it's the reserve asset of the world, we got an issue. That's what their job is. The Treasury was blowing up in the third quarter of 22. So what'd they do? Well, they emptied the TGA, that's the Treasury banking account, right? And over the course of the last few years, Janet Yellen, our Treasury Secretary at the time, started issuing only T-bills. Or for the most part, T-bills.
Short term
yeah,
for the listeners.
Yeah, 3, 6, 9 months. Short-term debt.
That's the difference between a T-bill and a Treasury bond? Is that?
Great question, John. T-bills, 3, 6, 9, 12 months. Bonds are longer in duration, 2, 5, 7, 10, 20, 30. So she starts issuing only short-term debt. I think right now we're issuing on average 20% of our debt in T-bills. It's usually under 10. As a matter of fact, a little over a year ago on CNBC, one of the best investors in our time, a guy by the name of Stanley Druckenmiller, most of us can't even tie his shoes, is on CNBC. And he basically calls Janet Yellen stupid. On national TV, I thought it was a little harsh. And she didn't term out the debt. She didn't. Well, it turns out that Jack Lew, under the Obama administration as Treasury Secretary, didn't term out the debt. Neither did Steve Mnuchin when he was under the Trump.
What does term out the debt mean?
Great question. Rates were historic lows, right? Remember we were at 1% for like almost 12 years? Well, if you had an 8% mortgage, John, I'm sure you refinanced it.
Yep.
You probably refinanced it to 6 and refinanced it again to 3. Why would you do that? Lower your payments. So did every municipality. So did every corporation. Governments were doing it. How come our government didn't do it? Wouldn't it have made sense to term out our debt, issue longer-term bonds at 1% instead of T-bills at 1/4%? It turns out that Steve Mnuchin, during the first Trump administration, wanted to issue a 50-year bond. He says, this would make sense. We'll issue it for 1% or 1.5%, whatever the rate was going to be. It doesn't really matter. Came back and told the American people that we couldn't do it. Why? Rutgers in New Jersey issued a 100-year debt. It's a AA rated school. Why could Rutgers issue a 100-year debt? And the United States government, supposedly the safest, most liquid market in the world, why couldn't they do it? Back to Janet Yellen. Back to Stanley Druckenmiller on CNBC. So was Janet Yellen really stupid? You may not like her, or may not like her politics and all that other stuff. She's not my favorite, but she's not stupid. As a matter of fact, I'm probably not fit to carry her pocketbook. Compared intelligence, right? Was she stupid? Or maybe the reason was she couldn't. And what do I mean by that? She couldn't term out the debt. Because if she couldn't term out that debt on the world's most secured asset, most liquid market, that's probably not a good sign. And that's really the truth.
Then why couldn't she?
No buyers. Since 2014, The global central banks have not added to their treasury net position for over 10 years. They're not buying treasuries. Who's buying them? Well, what are they buying? Well, they're buying gold. Maybe a story for a different day. Well, who's buying the treasuries? Turns out, since the last 4 or 5 years, hedge funds are buying treasuries. Now, why do hedge funds buy treasuries? I thought these guys are looking for, outsized returns. Yep, they are. But treasuries, you can leverage over 90% in some cases on treasuries. What do I mean by that? You have $100,000 in treasuries. You can borrow $90,000. Okay, I buy a treasury. The yields are much higher now, right? 4 or 5%, whatever they were over the last 4 or 5 years. I can borrow that money and go buy tech stocks, go buy real estate, go buy businesses. You're starting to see the picture here. And if you look around the world and you look at who's our largest buyers of U.S. treasuries, Japan's still up there. China's still up there, but they haven't added to their positions. The Cayman Islands is in the top 5. Cayman Islands, who the heck lives there? Yeah, Raw Paul from Real Vision lives there. But, well, Cayman Islands that's where a lot of people, that's where a lot of these hedge funds register. Luxembourg. I don't even know where Luxembourg is. It's somewhere in Europe. Well, they have a lot of hedge funds that register there too. Why? And again, this is why hedge funds, they could be levered 25, 50, 100 times. This is who's buying treasury bonds. I got news for you. Global central banks, they're idiot buyers. When they have to buy, they just buy. They don't care what the rate is, what the turn, just buy it. Hedge funds, these guys buy because the price is right. They're going to be the first ones out the door. I don't know what's going to happen with all these hedge funds, but if there's ever a crisis, my bet the black swan is in one of these hedge funds. As sure as I'm sitting here, I believe that to be the case. When will it happen? I don't know. But there's just too many treasuries with too much leverage. It doesn't look good. There's just too many signs for me. There's too many things that cause me to go, whoops, or what's going to happen here.
And so I issue my version of a bond called a mortgage to my bank, and there I borrowed money from them, right? And so if I default on that, they get my home.
Yeah,
like it's a mortgage backed, it's a real estate backed security. If there's a default where there's these treasury bills and treasury bonds, it's backed by the full faith of the U.S. government, which is a handshake.
Yeah, it's their word, right? I mean, we have the strongest army in the world. That's why everybody believes our debt is rock solid. Look, I don't want to put the fear of God in anybody here. Treasuries are never going to default. You put 10,000 in, 100,000 in, $1 billion in. At maturity, you're getting it all back. We have a printing press. You're getting it all back. The problem is
the value of what you're getting back.
The value of what you're getting back. And that's the issue. Remember what we said earlier in the show, guys. I think you got to beat 8%, 10%. There's only a handful of investments that are doing this. I mean, how many people that you know? I was talking to a buddy the other day, just got a brand new job. About a year ago, I saw him. Got a brand new job. Nice. He told me, so I'm going to hold out for as much as I can get. I said, do your best, because a year from now, you're down 10% in your income. He says, you're kidding. I said, yeah, you're going to lose 10% of your value here in a year. Get the best you can do. Our wages, yes, they're higher. They're doing great. Workers are happier. None of them are getting 10% raises.
Yeah.
Okay? So that means you're behind the 8 ball next year. So these things are kind of bad, in my opinion. These are warning signs. if you look at the Bible, there's warning signs, right? And you could say, well, this doesn't look too good. Well, these are warning signs in the economy. Buyer beware. Take caution. I have never been a gold buyer. I didn't buy gold for my whole career. I started buying it 5 years ago. What kind of gold should you buy? You should, we have a saying in Bitcoin, not your keys, not your coins. If you don't have the gold, you don't own the gold. All right. So you definitely want to get some gold.
And so if somebody wanted to buy gold for the first time, I've bought gold, but if I wanted to buy gold for the first time as a listener, how do you do that safely?
Well, everyone's going to go the ETF route,
mm-hmm.
right? It's just simple. Even with Bitcoin now, most people are just going to buy the ETF.
But that's not having the keys.
That's not having your keys. Also, do they have proof of gold? Now, the largest gold ETF, exchange traded fund, is GLD, Gold Larry David. It's the biggest one, the first one. It's paper gold. Is not sure that all that gold is there. Now, I do own the Sprott Gold ETF. All right. And everybody I've talked to says they have the gold bullion. Okay. So look, but I also own gold on my own. The problem with gold, owning gold on your own, there's a place in Texas here I just found out about a week ago. It's not a bank, but I forget the name of it. I'll shoot you an email that you can hold your gold in Texas privately. The problem with gold is you get the gold delivered to your house. Armored trucks outside your front of your house. You're getting gold delivered to your house. You don't think your neighbors are kind of like suspicious why the armored truck is out there?
There's a reason banks have vaults.
That's true. So you now have this gold. What do you do with it? Well, you're going to put it in your safety deposit box. Oh, great. Third party. What if you can't get in your bank? Can't get your gold. That's why I believe liquid gold is the place to go. But it brings me to a valid point I want people to understand. Nigel Farage is a big UK guy. You may not like his politics, but he's a wealthy guy, well known in the UK. About a year ago, he got locked out of his bank accounts. Frozen. Nigel Farage, well connected politically in the UK. My gosh, if this can happen to him.
He's in Parliament, I believe, right?
Yeah, in Parliament. Believe it or not, I just heard this a few months ago. In January of 20, Trump leaves the White House. Him and Melania leave the White House. They go to Mar-a-Lago. Melania takes Barron to the bank. Frozen. She doesn't have access to him. Wait a second. This is the former First Lady of the United States of America. Did not have access to her bank accounts. I don't know the whole story. She wrote about it. It's in I think it's in a book that she wrote. What chance do I have? So Randy and I got to know each other through a Bitcoin meetup. And about 2 years ago, this thing called Nostr started to gain some traction. What is Nostr? All the tech guys are going to beat me up here. Think of Twitter or X on a blockchain. That to me that's Nostr. You can't get sanctioned. It's on a blockchain. And I download the app for Nostr. I'm on Nostr. Look at me. About 6 months later, I'm at one of our Bitcoin meetups, and I can't get the Nostr thing to work. And we have a good friend, a mutual friend named Matt, and I call Matt over, and I say, Matt, this thing doesn't work. He looks at it. No, I can't figure it out either, but I got just the guy. He calls over this kid. I don't think he's even 25. He's got my phone. Doing this, doing that. Are you robbing me? Bum, 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 bum. You got debunked. Debunked? Yeah. What do you mean I got debunked? Apple debunked you. How? Well, I have an Apple phone. I'm using Noster on their phone. He says, you must have said something. You must have tweeted, or not tweeted, but I must have put something, agreed about something somebody said. They didn't like your comment. They debunked you. Well, how do I fix it? He says, yeah, you just sign on with somebody else. He showed me how to do it. I got debunked. What happens if I go home today, or any of you guys go home today, and your bank debunks you? Why? I don't like the way you look, John. I don't like gray hair. I don't like a guy who's got a big nose or brown or hazel eyes or, a guy, whatever. I don't like you.
Kids.
I don't like your kids. You're debunked. What would you do? Think about that. Happened in Canada with the trucker crisis.
Truckers, yeah.
It happened with the Ukraine. It happened to American citizens when we pulled out of Afghanistan. You didn't have access to your money for 48 hours. Okay, that was resolved quickly. You go home tonight, you got debunked. You're Melania Trump. Now, I think she has a little pull. What pull do you guys have? A few years ago, a woman gave me a book. We were talking about a lot of stuff, our health. We're basically the same age, and we were at a doctor's office, and I got into a conversation with her, and I was telling her about Bitcoin. She says, look, I'm going to give you this book to read. I like to read. I like to study. I'm going to quote this book wrong, but I'm going to give it my best shot. The Army Chaplain's Guide to Armageddon. I believe that's the name of the book. I read the book. And the guy had a lot of great points. I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I didn't think Y2K was going to end the world. I don't think I'm going to be without food. But okay, I read the guy's book. I listened to him. I'm not going to buy a farm and start, farming cows and chickens and growing my own produce. It's not me. But he had a lot of great ideas. And at the end of the book, he gives you a whole synopsis of what you could be doing as an individual to be a self-sovereign individual. And I read through the whole thing, and I thought, great, wonderful. If this really were to happen, let me ask you, what's one thing I know you're going to need? Besides water, air is free. They can't take the air from you. He did give me this idea about water, how you could turn water into, you can go down to the river. I lived across the street from the river downtown. I could go down there, take that water, believe it or not, run it through this thing, and it's drinkable. Okay, great. I can drink water for a few days. What are you going to go back to the Weimar Republic? What did these people need? They needed real money. You didn't deal with this, so I'll deal with it. That happens. Happens here in America, whatever. We have a debt crisis. We have a recession. I can almost guarantee you this. If I walk down to the local HEB and I stood outside and they debanked me from the banks, I have no access to my money. And I stood outside HEB. I had a gold coin or I had silver coins on me. And John, you're walking up and I say, gee, you look like a nice guy. I need help. I have a gold coin here. It's worth $3,000. Can you go in there and buy me $2,000 worth of food? Would you do that for me? Well, maybe you won't, but maybe Randy would. You're going to, we'll bargain how much money.
Yeah.
Right? You don't think someone's going to take me up on that? Someone's taking that money. Take Larry Lunchbucket out there.
Girl Scouts at the very least. I mean,
the Girl Scouts will take it. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, let me go one better with you because, I could get robbed on the way over to the supermarket. I have Bitcoin on a wallet. You have a phone. I can do it electronically. John, Randy, can you go in and buy me some food? I think I'm going to be able to do it. It's happening all over the world. It happens in Venezuela. It happens. We in our Bitcoin meetups, we've met people from Venezuela, Brazil, all over South America, Africa even.
Well, that's where I want to go when we come back. I want to take a break real quick. When we come back, I want to talk about the places where we've seen hyperinflation. We've seen Zimbabwean dollars go to $1 trillion bills and these types of things.
Yeah.
I want to come back and take the listeners through some of the things that have happened in our lifetime that we might be able to learn from. So let's take a few minutes.
Sure.
And we'll come right back.
All right.
Sounds good.
Okay, we're back from the break here with our guest, Jim Lynch. Jim, this has been so fascinating. I want to dive into like some of the things we're seeing around the world because, not everybody, certainly not me. I know there was some real problems in Venezuela. I know there was some real problems like hyperinflation in Zimbabwe in the early 2000s was just, I think I bought $1 trillion bill Zimbabwean for like $9 US, right? And it was worth like 80 cents the next week. It was really nasty inflation.
Hand me that, please. I'm sorry, my phone is. John said something that made my phone.
Oh.
Yeah, I evidently.
It's the AI is telling us all about hyperinflation. It's answering your question, which is interesting because I have it on Do Not Disturb.
We're in an age of AI for sure.
Yeah,
so
that's for sure.
That's good. Yeah, I tell my wife all the time, who works in marketing in the AI world in technology. I say you can't spell blockchain without AI because I'm not a marketing person.
Yeah.
I should never make taglines like that. And she just. Well, she doesn't roll her eyes at me because she's much more kind than that, but she tells me not to say things like that. You guys can roll your eyes at me. I get that from my kids.
We did internally.
At least it was internal. Usually I get it externally. So there's all these things happen. So take us through just like in our lifetime, in our recent history, we've seen problems that have come to fruition for countries, for nations.
Yeah, I think the last time I looked, I think there's 400 trillion in debt in the world.
So hold on.
I got
400 trillion.
I have a hard time grasping. By the way, we throw these numbers around, trillions. I really have a hard time comprehending what $1 billion is.
Yeah,
and then we're talking 400 trillion is insanity.
Well, the entire U.S. government collects $5 trillion a year. We said,
close to $5 trillion a year in taxes, right? So. And we're still spending almost $7 trillion a year. Look, we're being swallowed up in debt. A point. I want to make sure listeners hear this because I hear this all the time. Randy, you asked me about Japan before. I think we went on the air. Japan's worse than we are. Not all debt is equal. So Japan has a debt to GDP ratio. It's like 230 or whatever it is.
230?
Yeah, it's ridiculous. But Japan's net international investment position is plus 60%. So what does that mean? You heard me throw out that term before. Okay, you guys, we all have families here. You have a budget. And you're no longer 25. You probably have some type of saving vehicle. Maybe it's your 401k. Maybe you got a couple CDs at the bank. Maybe you even own some of these T-bills. So, God bless you. If, 2025 is a bad year for you. Companies cutting back. The wife got sick. Extra time in a hospital. Little Johnny, who's in his first year at college, you thought it was going to cost $50,000, cost $75,000. Whatever. At the end of 25, you're net a negative $25,000. So what do you got to do? Well, you can either borrow the money or your investment, your net international investment position is a plus $500,000. It's in your 401k, could be in your house, could be in your stock, could be in your brokerage account. Well, you're not going to borrow $25,000. What are you going to do? You're going to go and take the money out of your savings account. That's what most people would do because you don't want to borrow on your credit cards at 20%. It's okay. So Japan has a net international investment position of plus 60%. They have a till. They could sell U.S. assets. They could sell stocks, real estate, bond, whatever. A lot of countries have that. What's the USA? Before this year, beginning of this year, we're a negative 80%. It's insane. We're in trouble. Okay, we're in trouble. Now, you heard Scott Besson, our new Treasury Secretary, say we're going to monetize our assets. Well, what does that mean? Are you going to sell all our real estate? The Defense Department won't let you do that. Are you going to, sell our gold? Well, Congress makes that decision, not the Treasury Secretary. And you've heard this question come up a few times. Is that gold really there? We haven't audited it in 7 decades. Lakes, I hope it is, right? So let's hope. But I don't know what Scott Besson's going to do. Look, for your listeners out there, I have absolutely no idea what's going to happen these first few months. It's anyone's guess. But I believe I have a good handle on what's going to happen 1, 2, 5, 10 years out. Next 2 months, 3 months, anyone's guess. Is it okay you want to touch on Doge a little bit here?
Yeah, let's go into that.
All right. So last summer, Vivek and Elon came out with this idea. We're gonna create Doge, the Department of Government, whatever it is. Efficiency. Yeah. They're going to cut $2 trillion from our budget between the time Trump took office to July of 26, 18 months. Okay. $2 trillion divided by 18 months is about $110 billion a month. Now, you guys are all in business. If you decided that on March 1st, we're coming out with a new plan, well, most business people are going to want to come out and hit the ground running. I don't care what it is. You got a new exercise program, you got a new investment program, whatever it is, you want to come out and hit the ground running. I don't think we crossed 100 billion yet. Now, and everyone, I hear this from everybody. Elon, when he bought Twitter, now X, fired 80% of the staff and the company's running better than it's ever has before. Yeah. I can do that. You can do that. Can the government do that?
Well, it's a media business that's highly technically leveraged. Like, I think it's just not a good analogy.
Well, take any business. Take IBM. Take Apple.
Sure.
They're all cutting back. When you're a corporation and you lay people off, they go from your balance sheet to where?
The government's balance sheet.
The government's balance sheet.
Right.
All right. Now, as I think I wrote you guys a little note from X's point of view, they let go 80%. Now, maybe some of these people retired. I don't think too many 65-year-olds worked at X. Okay, so probably not too many retirements. They were probably pretty proficient with technology. Maybe they got another job. Did they get it right away? Did it take a few months? If it took a few months, well, what happened? And then what happens if they didn't get a job at all? Well, now they're on their government's balance sheet. All right. Elon goes to the U.S. government. I'm going to do to the government what I did with X. Oh, really? Okay, let's look at this just from a common sense point of view. All right, he goes in and you hear, and it's every day, oh, we're firing these people, we're letting go of these people, All right, I sit back and scratch my head here and say, okay, people working at Twitter or X, probably proficient in the STEMs, I would think. That would be my best guess, right? People working for the government, I don't think they're too STEM proficient. Now, do we have 65-year-olds working? Probably we do. So, yeah, some of these people, and they have taken retirement. Okay. And they'll get a pension payout, whatever the case may be. They'll go on Social Security. Oh, by the way, unfunded liabilities. Whoops. Let's not talk about that. So they'll go on Social Security. Now they got to go find other jobs, the people who can't retire. Well, find what jobs? I don't think they're going to find jobs, even at the pay they were getting. Or they're going to go on unemployment, food stamps. Okay, so in other words, they're on the government balance sheet, column A. They get let go, and they're over on the government balance sheet in column C now. I'm a logical guy. I understand 1 + 1 is 2. You took them off column A, you put them in column C. All right, on unemployment, it's probably cheaper. All right. Okay, now let's take these workers. What do you think the chances are that they have mortgages, credit card debt, student loans, car loans? Do you think some of them have these things? Who pays for that? Let me see. Well, what happened in 2008? My golly, the government pays for it. And where does the government get the money? From the taxpayer. Great. You thought Doge was working phenomenal, right? This is wonderful. I see Elon in the White House with Trump. We're doing a great job. Yeah, great. I got to cook that guy dinner tomorrow night. This is not working. Now, maybe they'll get some done. And yes, I'm an American. I love America. I want them to succeed. But you can't succeed at this program at 120% debt to GDP, 7% budget deficit, and a net international investment position of negative 80%. What you need to do is get that debt to GDP down, 70%. You need breathing room because the government's going to be laying out money. How much more money can we lay out? We're collecting $5 trillion in taxes. If the S&P goes up 20% this year, okay, we're still the government is on their calendar year started October 1, ended on December 31. Correct? My math is right. We're already running on over a $700 billion deficit for 25. $700 billion in the first quarter. Let me call up my grandkids. They probably all can do this without my help. $700 billion times 4 quarters. That's almost $3 trillion deficit for this year. Oh, by the way, guys, 2025, we have to roll over $7 trillion in debt that's coming due that we don't have the money for. And plus we have a potential $3 trillion budget deficit. That's $10 trillion if my math works out right. Oh, and let me give you something else to think about. I'm a baby boomer. I get all the agita. We've been bad. We don't know what we're doing. We ran the economy into the ground. Well, wait a second. This deficit has been since George W. Bush. That's when it really started to blow out. George Bush, I'm going to round about the numbers, $5 trillion when he left office. Obama comes into office. Hey, George, I see you're 5. I'm going to raise it 10. Trump comes into office in 16 and says, hey, by the time I get in office in January, it's going to be $20 trillion. And here we are at the end of the Trump-Biden 8-year term. If you let it be fair to Bush and Obama, we're at $37 trillion. Houston, we have a problem. And our unfunded liabilities, that's the baby boomers. That's Medicaid, Medicare, Social Security. Throw in veterans care. We're at 137%. These are the men and women who fought for us. And they're the reason we're sitting here today.
I just heard that number the other day. It puts us, it was at 120 or 130 trillion, something like that when you add it in. And what was even more alarming to me, that number included the next 75 years of tax receipts. they were putting on the books. The real number is over 200 trillion.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
But they're assuming like whatever it is, 70, 80 trillion, whatever those years of tax receipts that get paid into, Social Security, Medicare.
In New York City, they used to have a debt clock in New York City. They don't have it anymore. Seymour Durst was the guy who did it. He paid for it. I believe that was his name. I could be wrong. It's no longer there. But if you look at our unfunded liabilities, it doesn't matter if it's 100 trillion or 200 trillion. It doesn't matter, right? I mean, we don't have it. Excuse me. Now, I have 3 grandkids. I've said this a few times. My oldest is 18. I have one turning 14 in a couple of weeks, and my youngest just turned 10. I hope they love me. I think they love me. They tell me they love me. This is Generation Z we're talking about now. They were born with an iPhone in their hand. I'm 67. I'm in the middle there of the baby boomers. The oldest boomer turns 80 this year, believe it or not. The youngest is 62 or whatever they are. There's 76 million of us. We all vote. There's no way they're changing Social Security and Medicare in the near future. However, when you start hitting 80, you start dying. And you're going to die off of it. And a good part of these baby boomers are going to start dying. So I have to ask myself a question as a young baby boomer. what the chances are Generation Z 10 years from now or 15 years from now is going to vote to keep these payments coming? My grandkids love me. I really honestly believe that, and I love them. I don't think they love me that much. I just don't. I would not bank on that. So if you're close to this age and you think that something's not going to happen, you don't have the money. All right, that's Doge. All right, Randy.
Let me ask you a question.
Go ahead.
So when there's people listening right now, and they think, "Oh, Jim's crazy," because I know this because I watch people look at me like this as I have these conversations, and they've lived their whole life. The U.S. dollar has been the gold standard. The whole world runs on it. Everybody wants our dollars, and they think, yeah. The dollar's been the thing. It's been great forever, and they just think it's never going to happen. What do you tell those people?
Okay, common sense comes into play here. You have to ask yourself, if it's not the U.S. dollar, what is it? The yuan? The peso? Pounds? No one else wants this headache. There's a thing called Triffin's dilemma. This guy was one of the board sat on the board of governors back 20s or 30s. Triffin's dilemma. You should Google this and look it up. Each of you. It basically says if you're the reserve currency, you eventually got to print dollars so other countries can get the currency, right? And it's not good. And he predicted this 70 or 80 years ago. A great book out there called The Fourth Turning. I don't know if the guy's right or wrong, but there are cycles in life. History doesn't repeat itself. It often rhymes. You can look at this. I think we're in the one of those fourth turnings. I don't think the dollar is going to change. Everyone, China doesn't want it. They see what's happened to us. There's no way it's going to be the yuan. So who? Now, could it be a neutral reserve currency, like what the BRICS are trying to do, and their currency is gold? Yeah, maybe. Maybe. Look, for all the Bitcoiners out there, I don't think it's going to be Bitcoin either. All right? I know a lot of Bitcoiners want the Bitcoin standard. I just don't see it, at least not in my lifetime. Maybe in my grandkids' lifetime, yeah. I just don't see it. Now, there's other things they could do, and you're hearing about Bitcoin bonds from the Treasury and all these things. Yeah, I think a lot of that stuff could be worthwhile, and we could talk about that maybe at another time. And viable thing to do, I just don't see us getting off the dollar, Randy.
But you believe in it enough. You started mining, you're running in. I got to hear this story. I know Randy knows the story.
Well, let's go back. I guess my point is when I tell people it's math, and most people don't take the time. All the things you've been talking about, all of the problem, it's all math.
It's all math.
It's just the math. I challenge anybody to show me the math that works. So I'm going to defend Doge or whatever you say it a little bit.
Go ahead.
I agree with everything you said, by the way. And at least for the first time that I can remember, somebody's trying. God bless them. I agree with you.
Clinton balanced the budget.
Yeah, that was 25 years ago, right?
Yeah, but he's saying the first time I remember. It's math too, right?
Yeah, it's math. Yeah.
But by the way, did the debt increase or decrease or stay the same during that time?
I think I don't. I have someone fact check me here, but I think it might have decreased. Let's check.
Yeah,
increased.
It increased.
Increases the answer. I've been corrected.
They say it's like now. By the way, the numbers Jim says we're 1.8, 1.9 trillion above budget. If you notice, we're going 3 trillion a year in debt.
Yeah, it's
right. So there's the budget, and then there's the real number, and we don't have to dig into that now in the essence of time. But it's really a worse problem than they say. So I just challenge anybody to do the math. Show me. I would love to have you show me where the math works out. So I think it's inevitable. Yeah. And let's talk more about Bitcoin. We've referenced it a lot of times. I think your story.
All right.
I think your story is fascinating because you and I are not typical Bitcoiners.
Yeah, that's true.
How does the bond guy?
Yeah.
At what age did you find Bitcoin?
30 some odd years ago.
No, Bitcoin or how
30 some odd years ago.
You found Bitcoin?
Yeah.
Did you start investing at that point?
No, it wasn't available.
Okay.
I'll tell you the
Okay.
story. I want to make a brief comment. I want those to work.
Yeah.
Me too. I want America.
Yeah.
I want to be number one. Okay. I love America, the men and women who fought for my freedoms. I love you guys. You know, I get choked up on this. You know, the Vietnam War, I wouldn't have gone. I'm embarrassed to say, you know, but I want America to win. I want Elon to get this right. However, you got to get the debt lower because we're going to have to, these people, we're going to have to re-educate them. We're going to have to give them stipends. You know, you call it whatever you want. We don't have the money.
Yeah.
All right. If our debt was lower, if our debt was 80% of GDP, okay, I can take a few $1 billion, trillion, whatever it is, and give these people a stipend. Why the economy? Why we reshore America right now? We just got done fighting this war in Ukraine. Hopefully it's over. Russia won. We could not compete. Why? Because, follow the logic here. China makes our parts. They send them to us, and then we make the bomb, and then we send it over to you. Wait a second. Our adversary is making our equipment? All right. Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Well,
let me add to that one thing. It's a spending problem,
it's
right?
definitely a spending problem.
If you think about this as a family, I think when we start dealing with trillions, people can't put it into perspective.
Yeah, they can't.
So if we do that to scale,
Yep.
it's like the U.S. revenue. Think of it as a family making $50,000 a year, and if they're spending, whether it's $70,000 or $80,000 a year, you're spending 70 or 80. And you have debt that is $370,000 or over $100,000 with unfunded liabilities. The only way you get out of that is if you stop spending so damn much, right?
If that. Look, at some point in time, you're too far gone.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of Americans too far gone.
Yeah. And the interest right now is, what, 1.2, 1.3 trillion a year, just the interest on the debt and getting worse. So that's... I think for scale, that's where the math comes in. Yeah. And again, it's worldwide. So to your Bitcoin story, 30 years ago.
33 years ago, 1992. Jim, Bitcoin wasn't there. If you read the book Genesis, though, you're going to find out a lot of these crypto punks were real close. I didn't know any of these guys. What did I see in 1992? Remember, I'm a bond guy. I'm a debt guy.
How much was Bitcoin in 92? It had to be like 90 cents or something.
It was zero. Exist. Wasn't even invented yet. Well, how did I find it?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm watching the debates between George H.W. Bush, who was running against Bill Clinton at the time. I lived in Jersey, and there's this guy on stage from Texas named Ross Perot. I don't know if you guys remember this. Go back and watch some of these debates. Ross Perot was famous for bringing these charts up on stage. And he was talking about the national debt. I don't remember what the national debt was 33 years ago, but it wasn't that bad. And I'm sitting there and my mouth falls open. And I'm saying to myself, oh boy. And I started reading everything I could on debt, on what we're doing and how we're spending money. And I had this one client, I think he was part of the mob. I never sold this guy anything bad. I was afraid for my life. He used to call me up, Jim, what's the debt today? I don't know, 300 billion. Well, we're going to 350. What do you think this is going to do? Conversations like this. Started reading books. You get to the Asian crisis in 97, 98, bailed them out, print. Unfortunately, 9/11, the dot-com boom, bailed them out. 08. I remember, watching my stock. I had UBS stock at the time. My cost basis was $42 a share. It went up to 62, and all the managers at UBS, look at this, we're rolling in it. Yeah, at the end of 08, it was under $10. It was $1 or $2. I lost my shirt. I remember telling my wife, I said, look, this is what the government's going to do. Whether it's right or wrong, they're going to do it. If we don't pay this back, this is it. We're not getting out of this. And I started working remotely in 2011, 2012. I'm living in the Reno, Tahoe area, and working on my laptop. doing my bond thing. I'm watching Bloomberg News. Some young guy comes on there, starts talking about Bitcoin. My first thought was, if he's right, that's the greatest thing that I've ever heard in my life. Bitcoin. Okay. He's buying it and selling it, and he's buying stuff with it. Guys, I couldn't find one person. Now, remember, Tahoe's in not that far away from the tech industry. I couldn't find anybody who knew how to buy this. And the best thing I could figure out was you had to send your money to Japan. Took like 9 years to get there. You might get Bitcoin. It might go to Mount Gox. I don't know where. And at that time, my business partner called me up and he says, "Hey, Jim, I'm ready to, we were working at UBS. He says, I'm ready to go independent." And we opened up our own firm. And to be honest with you, I lost my way with Bitcoin. I just forgot about it. The next time I remember, it was 2017. A family member calls me up and says, "Jim, what about this Bitcoin?" It was heading to 20,000, right? One of those bull market runs. I said, "I wouldn't buy it if I were you." I mean, it's probably, long story short, I poo-pooed it.
Randy told me to buy it $600.
Yeah.
Maybe $400.
Beginning of 19, I'm sitting in my office, and this is what investment guys do when they have nothing else to do and they're bored. One of my associates calls me up and says, "Look, Jim, we're having an inter-office stock contest." You're talking to the bond guy here, right? Yeah, inter-office stock. We all have to pick 2 stocks. Oh, you got to give me 2 stocks. I don't want to be a part of this. Jim, I think there's 8 or 9 of us in the firm. All right, I tell you what I'll do. Bitcoin. Okay, that's your first pick. What's your second pick? Bitcoin. He says, "You're kidding." I said, "No." He calls me back. He says, "I can't track it on my computer because Bitcoin doesn't trade at a brokerage house. But we have this thing called GBTC, the Grayscale Bitcoin Trust. Can I use that?" "Sure, go ahead." I'm blowing the competition away. If you look at 19, Bitcoin had a great year until the fall. I'm winning. I'm thinking to myself, I'm the only guy in America that can do a contest like this, say I'm doing Bitcoin, and not own Bitcoin. So I started buying this thing called, there was a blockchain trust. I think the symbol's BLOK. I'm not even sure it's even still in existence. Started buying that. January of 20. My business partner, great guy. He's a little younger than me. I trained him in his business. His father hired me in the business. We ran our business 15, 20 years, whatever it was. Never had an argument. Well, we did. He says, "Jim, I own more of the company than you do." That's it. Okay, that was 70% of my net worth. Now I'm sitting there in March of 20 thinking, okay, I got to come up with a new plan. This one's not going to work. Oh, Bitcoin. I look at GBTC, my first investment. Bitcoin's trading around 6,000, 6,500, whatever it is. I threw 25,000 in because I got bought out. I got my payment from my stock for the company, and I put 25,000 in GBTC. Next day, it's up 25%. I'm a trader. This is great. I sell it. What's it? It's trading at 7, 7.5, whatever it is. I thought I'll just buy it back when it goes back down. Well, it ain't going down. I thought, well, this was stupid. So I decided to say, all right, I'm going to buy GBTC. Look, it's a closed-end fund. I understand closed-end funds. Been around for decades. I understand how to buy them, how to sell them. I knew the legal part of it. Started buying it. I said, I got to learn Bitcoin. I started consuming everything, reading everything, listening to everything. And I would tell anyone before you buy Bitcoin, you need at least 100 hours of study, probably more like 1,000. Look, you're going to make 50% a year on average. This is not Apple. This is not NVIDIA. You have to know what you're doing. Or else what you're going to end up doing is buying at 109, like where it was a few weeks ago, and selling at 84, where it's trading now. That's what people who don't know Bitcoin do. And then they hate it forever. I read everything. I put in thousands of hours on this. Look, it's a huge part of my net worth. Am I bummed that it's down 20% from its all-time high? Absolutely. But I bought more yesterday. I bought more today. It's going up. All right. It's 16 years. I've heard this nonsense. It's a tulip bulb. First of all, if it was a tulip bulb, it would have fizzled out 12 years ago. It's not a tulip bulb. Okay. It's used all around the world. Millions of people own this thing. The great thing about it, it's a non-issuer. No one can control it. I run my own node. I'm part of 18,000, 19,000 people around the world that run their own node. What's a node? Here's a node. It's the best way it was ever explained to me. I'm the sheriff in town. We're all sheriffs. Come on, everybody get their guns up. All right, somebody does something wrong. This is what we're doing. That's what a node operator does. Protects the network. I mine Bitcoin. What's a miner do? That's how you get Bitcoin. It's, without getting to all the weeds and the details, it's a complicated formula. You're guessing a number. Yeah, and you get Bitcoin. I went to school. I invested the money in the miners.
What's the investment take to get a mining operation going?
Oh, it could be anywhere from, a couple $1,000s to a few $100,000.
Yeah.
Depends how elaborate you want to be. Some guys, gals, will run a right in their home. The problem is these machines are loud. So, you may not want to put one in your living room. Your wife may be a little upset, although we'll do a great job heating your house.
Yeah.
Maybe not this last week, but in any event.
By the way, I became a Bitcoin miner 2 weeks ago. I bought a HeatBit.
All right.
Which is a heater that is in the house, and the Bitcoin mining puts off the heat. Basically, what I would pay for heating is mining Bitcoin. Now, it mines 40 cents a day. It's irrelevant. It's probably may never
fun.
Pay for itself, but yeah.
It's a learning experience. To me, you've heard the term, not your keys, not your Bitcoin. Look, I have keys to my Bitcoin. How do you buy Bitcoin? I would recommend anyone starting to buy Bitcoin strategy called DCA, dollar cost average. Look, this thing is volatile. That's why you're getting 50% a year. You're going to buy some highs, some lows, so DCA.
You talked earlier about like 60-40, like the whole bonds and equity things.
Dead.
And so you'd be 100% Bitcoin right now? Okay.
No. Started off at 10. And what I would do is if it went to 15, I'd sell a little bit. If it went to 20, sell a little bit. If it went down to 5, I'd buy a little bit. And as I'm learning and as I'm studying, I'm just getting more confidence as we go. I compare it to religion. Yeah, you hear about Jesus. He sounds like a pretty decent guy. Maybe, look, a lot of historians have wrote about him. He sounds reasonable. And if you read more about him, at the end of the day, you either have to have faith to believe in him or not. I choose to believe in him. I can give you just as much research to have you go down this path. I can also give you just as much research to have you not believe in Jesus, okay? The Bible was supposedly written by God. I'm just going to take him at his word. I wasn't there. Neither was anyone else. Okay, he did it. All right, yet the virgin birth, the whole 9 yards, sounds totally unreasonable, but the research. Now, let's take research. Research. I'll give you all the research in the world why to buy Apple. And I'll give you all the research you want not to buy Apple.
Yeah.
Same thing with Bitcoin. You heard it in real estate. What's the most important thing in real estate? Location, location, location. In Bitcoin, it's study, study, and study. You never stop studying it.
What do you study? I mean, I think it's great advice, but what do I study? Like if I'm a guy who's not, there's listeners here that are huge into Bitcoin, I'm sure. And we probably have some listeners that are relatively new.
Yeah.
Where do they start?
The Bitcoin Standard by Dr. Safin Amos.
Okay.
Start there. I was at my dentist yesterday, and he's my age, and he asked me, hey, what's going on? Yada yada. We got on to Bitcoin. I just bought him the book. I'm going to give it to him as a gift. Mm-hmm. Start there. Start watching podcasts. Start reading white papers. Attend Bitcoin meetups. They're all over Austin. Austin is Bitcoin Central. Unchained Capital is located down here in the middle of Austin. They run events all the time. Start going to them. You know, I have to tell you, I went to my first Bitcoin meetup in March of 22, and I'll tell you why I went. I heard about South by Southwest. It's supposed to be something really big here in Austin. Everyone brags about South by Southwest. Well, in 2020, they didn't have it. So I couldn't wait for 2021. Bitcoin has to be a part of this. Technology? There's nothing on Bitcoin. And you had to be vaccinated and wear a diaper on your face. It's not going to go over too well with me. The Bitcoin Commons with Unchained, come as you are. No one had a diaper on. I don't know about their vaccination status. It's not I don't really care if you want to do it. You don't want to do it. It's totally up to you. It's your choice. The mayor comes. No conservative by any means. I'm a libertarian, but he's a little on the liberal side. I forgot his name. But, you know, in any event, he comes. No mask. Okay, I'm in pretty good company, I guess. Now, so they ran the Bitcoin program March of 2022 or 21. I forget what, and it was like, this is the America I know. I met people there. I met men there, women there. And boy, it's like a religious festival. It really is. It's almost a cult. I don't want to say that, but look, I think it's I've been in this business 40 years, 39 years. I've seen a lot of great things come and go. I went through the .com thing, and if not the century, Bitcoin's certainly the best investment over the next decade. I defy anyone to put the time in and study this. 98% conversion rate. If you take the time, and be objective. Don't come in with an attitude like this. Look, there's a reason why Wall Street hates it. There's a reason why Jamie Dimon thinks it's garbage. They're coming for its lunch. When you see people on the news media, the CNBC or whatever, these guys are talking their book. These guys are investment professionals. They buy and sell stocks and bonds and art and gold and real estate. You think he's talking? He wants you to believe that he's doing this. It's a hoax.
Yeah.
When I first got into when I first joined my first firm, one of my managers said to me, "Jim, don't believe anything any investment professional tells you. Go do your own research. Go find out yourself. Go read for yourself. Find out why it's right or wrong." And I would tell your listeners to do the same thing. Yeah. Don't listen to the knuckleheads. We all know that they've been giving us lies for the last several decades on any subject you want to talk about. Why would you believe them? Go find out. Go learn about Bitcoin. Learn how to send money to an exchange. River.com, if I can give a plug. Look them up. Read about it. What are they doing? What are they charging? Okay, once you know how to buy it, how do I store it? Now, don't take the easy way out and go buy the BlackRock ETF. Yeah, look, I do it. I understand the logic here, but go learn it. Understand. You don't have to be a miner, but understand what it means to be a miner. Understand what it means to run your own node. Look, 50% a year. You're not getting that because it's simple. If it was simple, everybody would be doing it. Everybody just wants to throw money in the Mag 7. Okay, my kids can do that. I know my kids are older, but my grandkids could do that. Go learn about something. You have to ask yourself a question. Do you think things like AI, technology? I remember in the 90s, 1995 is like the year the Rolling Stones came out with Start Me Up and Microsoft 95. That's like the kickoff for the internet, right? The Rolling Stones got on board. Go back and watch the commercial. It was a great commercial. It was wonderful. Look, I remember working for a company. I don't want to badmouth them, but, you guys can't use email. That's bad. You got to use the intranet, if you guys remember that. Couldn't send out an email to a client. Do you think we're getting less technology or more technology? Yeah. I can give you 100. I've met people all around the world. Bitcoin is being used. Don't kid yourself. This is rocket fuel. Get on board. If you don't want to be on board, great. I don't think ill will of anybody. 67 years old. This is what I tell my kids. Buy Bitcoin. Whether they do or not, that's totally up to them. My grandkids, I control their accounts. They're buying Bitcoin. But, I sat down with my oldest granddaughter. She just turned 18 6 months ago. So a year ago, she was 17. And I said to her, look, you're going to be 18 next year. And that account I have for you is going to be yours. And I want you to know, I'm sure you do know, there's Bitcoin in there. Now, I couldn't do, at that time, I couldn't do the real Bitcoin. I had to do an ETF, right? So, I know, but look, you're going to be 18. I think you can retire or have the ability to retire by 30. I honestly believe this. I don't think this kid is going to have any trouble in life. She's a very bright kid. All my grandkids are really bright in their own way. They each have specialties, but I'm going to tell each one the same story. You're going to turn 18. This is what I want you to start doing. I want you to start sending me money every month. Because she's got a job. Now she's going to college. I said, look, every month, I don't care what it is. Whatever you can afford, start sending me money. And as you get along in life, send me more money and send me more money. It's all going to Bitcoin. Look, in 5-6 years ago, the threat of going to zero was real. Okay? It was real. That's no longer the case. A few years ago, regulations was real. It was really real. China tried to disband it. You mentioned before India and Japan. Didn't work. Just went somewhere else. There's no CEO of Bitcoin. You have all these other cryptocurrencies, and look, some of them are going to hit really, really big. Just like the internet stocks. Okay, which ones? I have absolutely no idea. Bitcoin, rock solid. It's going to be there. Don't miss this opportunity of a lifetime. You don't get many of these.
Yeah.
Over your lifetime, I could think of a handful of times that things really just were like, real estate in the late 80s, right? At the savings and loan crisis. Stocks after 2001 and 08. Oh, you could have made a fortune. This not my generation. Generation Z, Generation X. This is your opportunity to hit a grand slam. Don't miss it. Don't miss it. Percentage-wise, get off zero.
Yeah.
And once you're at 1%, all right, maybe I can go to 2. I started at 10. I'm now at 40. Okay. I have 10% in gold. The rest is all short-term bonds. There you go. Look, the market's down. Okay, not a big deal. But I got the bonds. All right. If I need money, I'm going to the bonds. They're coming due all the time. I'm rolling it over. It's that simple. You need help? Email me, call me. I'm more than willing to help you. I'm not your financial advisor. Okay? I don't want to do that anymore. Okay? Call me up. I'll be more than happy to help you. I got several friends. Jim, what should I be doing?
You're going to mine it. You're going to run the node. You're going to be the sheriff to make sure it's all good.
It's all good.
Yeah.
This is, I can't stress it enough. It's an opportunity of a lifetime. Don't let this go by. And look, even if you don't like it, you don't want to buy it, find out why you don't want to buy it. You're going to come to the pearly gates at some point in time in your life. We're all going to die. And you're going to stand there, and supposedly St. Peter's going to come down to meet you. Make sure you have the right answer. Okay? Because if it's the wrong answer, and all that research you did to give you the wrong answer, what is is it so bad to live a good life? All right, I could have had a lot of women. Okay, I missed out. I could have done all the drugs I wanted to do. Okay, I'm healthier for it. I could have made more money in life. Okay, I missed out. My wife, my wife has just she's down there. She left me a note on my computer one day. She says, early in our marriage, where you are in life right now, you would have been tickled pink. You prayed for this day. And now I look at my life now like, oh gosh, we always want more, right? I mean, you always, oh gosh, why couldn't I sell Bitcoin at 109 and bought it back to the 84, right? We always, we're human. When you get to the pearly gates, just understand why you came to the conclusion you did and pray that you're right. If I'm wrong, I lived a moral life. If I'm right, I'm in eternity for a lifetime. I don't think that's such a bad bet. I really don't. I feel the same about Bitcoin. They're very similar. A lot of Bitcoiners are Christians. A lot of people find, look, if they lie to me about the money and lie to me about my food and lie to me about this, what else are they lying to me about? There you go, guys. I hope I helped. I hope I was a good guest for your show here.
This has been great. I think it's super informative. And I think as listeners, I think I put myself in the box of learning probably as much as anybody who's listening in today. And it's a great reminder to be educated. There's things in your life that you can't really delegate to somebody else, and understanding how the money works. That's just whether you're just talking about your household or the world. I think we all owe it to ourselves to at least understand. And there's some form of Pascal's Bitcoin wager that hasn't been written today that probably gets written after this episode. So
it's been fantastic. So
yeah,
I knew you'd be great. You're better than I expected.
So, thank you,
thank
you, Randy.
Yes,
you're a good friend, and John, I watched a couple of your videos. I'm just amazed at your life. God bless you, man.
I appreciate that.
I think you guys are doing a good work here. I hope you can grow this really, really well. You want to help people. We need more people. I read the other day, Michael Jordan, a basketball player, opened up his 4th clinic in North Carolina. He put $10 million, cost him $10 million. It's the 4th time he's done this. I don't know much about this. What's he doing? He's from North Carolina. Grew up in North Carolina, went to college in North Carolina. It's worth billions of dollars. Look, maybe somebody is going to email me and say, Jim, look, from what I read, he's opened up 4 health clinics in North Carolina, all to help the poor, the uneducated, those who can't get insurance out. And I thought to myself, that's what we need to be doing as people. I mean, if we just take all these riches and say fungu to everyone else, we really didn't learn anything. So what? Okay, so you got a couple more bucks than the next guy. Now, I'm not shouting money. I don't know nothing about Michael Jordan, except that I think he's the best basketball player in the world. But, why aren't other billionaires doing this? And maybe they are. I don't know. Why Paul McCartney or... I shouldn't pick on these guys, but, look, I'm sure they're all doing what they think is right.
Sure.
But, it's nice to see that. It warmed my heart that a guy like him helping out just North Carolina, that's okay. Let the guy in Virginia, let the Ross Perot's family help out people in Texas for all I care, but do something.
And how about the media cover that? We can get it. It's a whole other show on
yeah.
I think there's a lot of that happening, and we just
don't know.
It's not what the media is talking about.
Yeah. Well, I can always come back, but
love it. We'd love to have you back.
Love it,
Jim. Thanks
great.
for being here. Really appreciate your time today. This has been my head's spinning.
Yeah.
So this is great.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Listeners, as always, check us out: iTunes, Spotify, Fountain, YouTube, wherever you want to find us. That's great. Download, subscribe, give us 5 stars, tell your friends, tell your family, all the good stuff. Check out the website, talesofabundance.com, for more information to be a part of the community. And again, thanks, Jim. This has been fantastic.
All right, man. Thank you.
Thanks so much.